All right, happy Halloween. Dan Fitzpatrick here, stockmarketmentor.com, and I want to look at Tesla today. Now, as each day goes by, this is starting to look better and better. It's still kind of ugly as far as the choppy chop from top to bottom here. It's about 12% or so, something like that, which is still kind of a pretty wide range. But that's kind of the way Tesla trades. I've never really seen Tesla trade particularly smooth. But what I'm seeing here is, again, just kind of tighter lows and highs. This is kind of coming together. Volume, generally speaking, is lower than average volume. And so, as far as Tesla goes, this is some pretty good consolidation. Now, a while back, Piper Sandler, um, and I don't know that firm, but I guess they're good, said that their price target on this is 500. And so the stock popped up a little bit. It's kind of ground around since then. You can see we had a trade on, and then somewhere along the line, I took it off. And this is what I want to point out. That's why I'm covering this stock. It's at least the way I trade. It's good to be trading a stock when it's doing that from low to high, generally speaking, along that trend line. Okay, that's fine. But I don't care if this is Tesla or Schmeshla or anything else. What I care about is this pattern. I care about this kind of move. The reason I'm saying that is because that's different than caring about the stock. Oh, I'm making money in Tesla. And the reason I say that is because if you're fixated on Tesla as opposed to fixated on making money, then while the stock's grinding around here for weeks on end, I mean, for what, a month and a half or so, while the stock's chopping around like this, you're staying long the stock. Maybe you're even buying more, maybe you're selling whatever, but you're fixated on Tesla, TSLA, when it's just drifting sideways. And this is the type of trade for somebody else who's not really a trend trader, but they like to trade the volatility. They like to trade between the bands, buy at the lower band, sell at the upper band, stuff like that, which is another way to trade, but it's different than riding trends like this. I like to ride trends, frankly, because I think you make more money. It can be difficult because this idea of selling into strength is always a good thing. But sometimes you go like, well, do I sell it all? Do I sell some? What do I do? So there are issues with just riding trends. They're good issues. They're awesome issues to have, but they are issues. You don't have those same types of issues when you're trading these channeling stocks because you have very specific buy points, very specific stops, very specific sell points because you're trading within the box here. So that's kind of what I'm looking at on for Tesla right now, as it is just still kind of trading in this box. You can put the box wherever you want to. I'm putting mine here, and I'm really going to be interested in buying Tesla if or when this alert is triggered. And that's my trade on Tesla. I don't want to fart around with it here. I got better things to do with my time, and you probably do too. I'm not in love with Tesla. My wife is, but I'm not in love with Tesla. I'm in love with breakouts from consolidation. And if we get a run above here, I think that's exactly what we're going to have. So, okay, that's all I got for you. I hope you guys have a good weekend. Halloween, I hope that goes really well for you. Not really my kind of holiday, but nobody cares about that. Go Santa.